Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I was holding that for about 10 seconds. But my mic was muted. So welcome in. It is a wacky Wednesday here on the show. Obviously, a lot of things going on today. Interestingly enough, is going to be a good old-fashioned 3-show Wednesday. It feels absolutely insane, but it is kind of where things are headed right now. Of course, we have the Russ Joy Show right now. And then at 5 o'clock, down at Chickies and Pete's in South Philly, right down Packer Avenue, like right down from the sports complex. We'll be doing Snow the Goalie Radio over on WBCB Radio and on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And then, as if that weren't enough, from 5 to 6, we're then going to go across the street, and we have the Press Row Show at 7 o'clock ahead of Flyers, Oilers tonight. Connor McDavid in town against your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. So there is a whole lot of my 5-head on your screen from now until the end of the night. So I guess to some extent, I apologize for the oversaturation of me. Apologize to your spouses, to your children, to anybody that you neglect over the next however many hours. I mean, think about it. We are here 2:15, right? We'll probably do the show for around an hour, maybe a little bit less. And then there's an hour of Snow the Goalie Radio. And then there's, give or take 3 hours or so where you're kind of glued in on the Press Row Show. That's a lot of hours to spend together. That's more time than I will have spent with my wife and my children today. I share that time with you because I appreciate all of you. And Ford quoting that guy that I ran into at the Xfinity Mobile Arena who introduced me to his daughter as, "This is Russ Joy. He's a famous podcaster." And I said, "No, I'm not." But it was very nice of him. All right, anyway. We are very, very excited, though, because there's so much to get to. And I want everybody to know that I intend on getting to as many things as I can on today's show. That includes the Philadelphia Eagles with a big win on Monday Night Football. That includes some of the fallout because, of course, why can't we just have a nice win? Why can't we just have nice things? There, of course, has to be fallout, which we will get to on the show. We're also going to get to Jaelan Phillips having an incredible debut as a member of this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Some comments from Saquon Barkley about DeVonta Smith. Harrison Bader appeared to say goodbye to Philadelphia and to the fans. And, the Sixers. The Sixers had a nice little win. It got a little bit nervy at points in that game, but the Sixers walked away with a nice win over the Celtics, their second of the season against those dreaded, dastardly Boston Celtics very early in the season. They've already played them 3 times, but 2 wins to show for it against the Celtics. So we'll get to that as well. And if there are other things that decide to tickle your fancy, you can drop them in the comments. I know that some of you might be like, "Oh, are we going to talk about the Flyers today?" I don't think we're going to talk a lot about the Flyers today. Why? Because I've got Snow the Goalie Radio coming up in a couple of hours, and then the Press Row Show. And how much hockey talk can you really want or stand in a given day? I will tell you that, interestingly enough, some of the fallout around the Couturier-Mishkov thing has, I think, to some extent gotten actually more interesting. But I saw it last night. I think I was over on Twitter, and I saw people complaining about it again. And I was like, how the hell have we not moved on as a collective entity? How have we not yet moved on from this Couturier-Mishkov thing? I saw people still talking about it. So, God bless, I guess. God bless. Let me go over to the comments here before we really get started going. Chris Freed asks, "Is Sweet Child of Mine Guns N' Roses' best song?" I'd say it's probably up there. It's one of their songs. Ford says, "Ford and Russ going to Sheets for a check-in on their fryer quality." Yeah, so Ford wants to try to get in on doing some content together. He thinks that I said, "Listen, Fryer Friday is not bad," or Ford Fryer Day. I can't. Ford kind of wants to do a whole video series comparing Sheets and Wawa, which in theory I'm down for a little bit of food talk. I don't know if that's the kind of food talk I want to do. It. We'll find out. Greg Bondarenko says, "Afternoon, all. Busy day for Russ and the Snow the Goalie crew." Indeed, it is. I think we're also going to have a guest on Snow the Goalie Radio, somebody that you hear on the radio, assuming that this goes the way that I expect it to. I believe we are supposed to have Todd Fedoruk on Snow the Goalie Radio today. If he's not there today, don't blame me. All right, I'm just an idiot. I'm just a dope who talks into a microphone. I'm pretty sure he's going to be with us today, but just in case he's not, don't hold it against me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to be with us. So that should be a lot of fun as well. He does a great job on the radio, and we'll, get to that as well. Let's see. Chris Freed says, from Reading, Pennsylvania, a 53-year-old man was accidentally shot in the back when his dog jumped on a bed, causing a shotgun to discharge. Police found him conscious and took him to the hospital. Was it a relative? No. Why would that be a relative? Was the person's last name Joy? Because if so, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Perhaps. All right, let's see. We got Faucets checking in from Texas and then says November Rain is an epic. The other songs are great. November Rain takes it all. Let's see. There were a few other things going on over here real quick. Let's see. Bondarenko says the Rustache is coming along nicely. I held off. I had the beard going for a good long while, and then I shaved it down, and I said, I'm going to keep the stash. But instead of trimming it to a low length, I'm just going to rock the potentially, bushy stash. We'll see how that goes for a little bit. By the way, if you're watching over on the Joy Media YouTube account, I think you're watching the show right now in portrait mode, in the vertical mode. If you're on, this didn't go to Instagram for some reason again, so I've got to fix that. I think it's just the Joy Media accounts. I have the vertical video. By the way, if you're watching on Joy Media, I love you and I appreciate you. But go over to the Russ Joy Show YouTube or Facebook. The Joy Media thing is kind of like a catch-all. A lot of the best commenters on the show, a lot of the most active commenters are over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. So that's pretty much the place to be. But if you're on the Joy Media account, I appreciate you and I think you're great. Let's see. Freed says, I disagree with the Bader leaving post, but then again, I'm a lawyer and I went word by word on it. The key phrase was this year. We're going to get to that in a second. We'll talk about the third quarter. I saw Connor Buss asking about the third quarter, so we will talk about that. Zach O is here. Hello, Zach O. Connor Buss is back from the dead, a.k.a. the common cold. Joe Fisher is here. What a wonderful group of people. Makes me happy to see all these people. All right, so let's get into it. Let's start with the positive. Let's start with the Eagles win. Now, we're 2 days out, right? We're 2 days removed from Monday Night Football. We're not doing a play-by-play breakdown of the game. You have consumed all the media and all the content that you want with the play-by-play breakdown of a 10-7 Eagles win. We don't need to get into it. We don't need to really have much of a discussion. Here's what we can talk about. There are accusations of DeVonta Smith, there are accusations of A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts going rogue. There is certainly a big play made in the game by DeVonta Smith. There were some really positive comments that came out about DeVonta after the game. And then, of course, there was the debut of Jaelan Phillips, and all of that was happening. And in the background, Jaire Alexander apparently is going to retire. So I don't even know where to start because I'm like, I would go positive, but then there are some negative things that we have to acknowledge. And I'm like, do we go over here? Do we go over that? We're going to try to get to as much of this as we can. But I need everybody to just kind of meet me. Let's do this. Hold on. Let me find the zoomy thing. How do I do this? It's this one. All right. I need everybody to just look into my eyes. Gaze into my eyes for a second. We need to come to an understanding here. Okay. The Eagles win on Monday night was not perfect. The Eagles win on Monday does not necessarily instill a ton of confidence, right? The Eagles game on Monday doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. There are certainly things that are still broken. And of course, we had to have a little bit of controversy around young A.J. Brown, not only with an alleged going rogue in the game, but then something that he said on a stream on Tuesday night. However, the Eagles beat the Packers, and the Packers are viewed widely as one of the biggest threats in the NFC. And so I will still choose to take the positive path here while also acknowledging that there were some big old flaws on Monday night. But I will also acknowledge that in a defensive battle, which Monday night pretty much was, it was amazing to watch the return of one Nolan Smith. It was great to watch Nakobe Dean buzz. It was incredible to watch Jaelan Phillips immediately fit in right away. All right, so now that we've acknowledged that, let's go back out. Okay. So let's talk for a second, okay? Let's just chat for a second. I know that it wasn't a game that got everybody inspired, okay? I get that it was a game that we were very frustrated about. I get that it was a game where it was scoreless at halftime, and that felt really gross. But sometimes you need to acknowledge the fact that for better or worse, they don't ask how, they ask how many. and the Eagles are 7-2. The Packers are a good team. I am not enamored with the Packers. Do I think that like playing the Packers in the playoffs could be a real challenge for this Eagles team? I do. Did I walk away from Monday night's game feeling like, oh no, this is a team that absolutely could stick it to the Eagles and blow them out? No, if you remember, I think I said it would be like a 4-point game. Now, I didn't have it going 10-7 as the final score, but I do believe that on Monday, my prediction was a 4-point game. I thought it was going to be close. I didn't see either team blowing the other out. The Eagles defense took things to a whole other level, and they did a lot of that on the back of Jaelan Phillips. Now, I am not going to try to sell this as if Jaelan Phillips is the only guy who got something done on the defensive side of the ball. We saw Brandon Graham get some snaps in. Of course, we got to see, like I mentioned before, Nakobe Dean. We got to see Nolan Smith. All those things are great, right? But like, we have to actually have the conversation about what Jaelan Phillips accomplished in his first game as an Eagle. Now, remember, he played for Vic Fangio in Miami, and the thought was he's going to come here. If he's getting acquired by this Eagles team before the deadline to play a position of need, and it's somebody who had previously played for Vic Fangio must really vouch for this guy. Oh, ho-hum. What did Jaelan Phillips end up with? A forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 8 pressures, 7 hurries, 6 tackles, 6 stops, a 19.4% pressure rate, and he got a game ball from Nick Sirianni at the end of the game. And I want you to hear what that sounded like, because I think that in the midst of a season where there's been a lot of negativity, even though the team is 7-2, and there's perceived drama at every turn, and that every feels like an existential crisis, I think it's important that we actually do hear the positivity coming out of the locker room. So this is post-game. This is Nick Sirianni presenting a game ball to Jaelan Phillips, who stood out in a very big way in his first game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go out to Nick Sirianni here for a second, and let's hear what he had to say and why he ultimately gave game ball to Jaelan Phillips. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, coach.
Defense. Wow. Wow. Hey, sometimes you, sometimes me, always us. Guys, that pays off, right? We are a smart football team, right? You guys did a great job in those moments. We had a couple of those like that. Really good job. We figured out a way. That's what we do. Hey, to win in Lambeau against a really good team, that shows a lot of courage. Hey, and welcome with a big-time strip sack.
There he is. So we knew that Jaelan Phillips really liked being here. Remember the other day, he said it was like a dream come true, right? So then you go into this game and you go, all right, what's he going to look like? I just read off the stats to you. He was fantastic. This dude has figured out how, not, again, we're not at Bryce Harper level pandering, all right? He's not going to show up with like swoop elbow pads or something, right? But like, I just want you to hear from Jaelan Phillips himself, because if you're a fan, which all of you are, if you're a fan of this team, you want to hear that guys like playing here, because between Zadarius Smith, up and retiring out of nowhere, now Jaire Alexander apparently considering retirement, you want to know that like this whole thing isn't a total shit show. You want to know that like people do actually like playing here and that it's a positive thing to walk into. Here's Jaelan Phillips post game talking about what it's like to be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles and how he viewed his first performance. Let's go out to Jaelan Phillips.
I mean, this is a completely different feeling in a different environment. Like, you get emotional before certain games. Like, I don't know. It was a new feeling, because this was just like symbolic of a lot of change in my life and, kind of a new path, new destiny. So for this to be the first game and for it to play out how it did, I just think it's surreal.
So good for him. I mean, listen, if you reach the pinnacle of a sport, right, like you get to play in the highest level on the defending Super Bowl champion, a team that legitimately has a path to getting home field advantage in the NFC, a team that could potentially get back to another Super Bowl. You go from a Miami team that was a total disaster, dumpster fire, epic failure. And we have, to be fair to Miami, that is what it is. Jaelan Phillips lands here. Now, it would be easy for a guy to put way too much pressure on himself. It would be totally understandable if Jaelan Phillips, for whatever reason, felt overwhelmed by the moment. How do I integrate into this defense? Oh, sure, I played for Vic Fangio before, but I don't want to disappoint him. Clearly, Vic Fangio went to bat for me. I don't want to disappoint him. I don't want to disappoint this fan base that, remember, he said earlier in the week or over the weekend that his first Instagram post had gotten like 20 times more likes than it ever had when he played elsewhere. So, like, this guy understands the level of passion that this fan base has. He understands that the expectations are incredibly high. The expectations for the team are incredibly high, and he plays a position of need, a position that, quite frankly, just like hasn't been good enough to this point. Now, I will put Nolan Smith's injury as a big part of that, but let's also include the fact that they had to go pull Brandon Graham out of retirement. That's how bad the depth was at that position. It would have been totally understandable if Jaelan Phillips had just gone out and had like a moderately decent game, an okay game, a passable game. All right, well, he made a couple of plays. He got to the quarterback a couple of times. He had a couple of pressures, positive signs. This dude came out and balled out at Lambeau Field in his first game as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles against one of the NFC's best teams in the Green Bay Packers. And he looked like arguably the best player on that defense on Monday night. Now, we can also zoom out and say a lot of guys on the defense had a great night. We can also take a look at the secondary that had some pretty strong plays and some pretty damn impactful plays. We take a look at the linebackers and say, you know what? Other good plays being made. Jalen Carter certainly seemed to be collapsing the line. All good things. But Jaelan Phillips was a standout guy. And there's something good about the fact that he's willing to have that humility of saying, like, this is kind of like a new path, a new destiny. Like, good for him. That's a really good thing. People should feel good about him, I think. Now, somebody on the defense that you're probably not feeling very good about right now is Jaire Alexander, because this came out on, on Tuesday, that Jaire Alexander is considering retirement, which seemed to come out of nowhere. Because remember, when Zadarius Smith decided to retire, I've yet to get confirmation on this, right? And I'm not trying to be like grossly irresponsible or try to be like a TMZ-ish kind of person, but like Zadarius Smith came into his tenure with the Eagles as somebody who was talking about how he had a lot left to give and he had a lot in the tank and he wasn't anywhere near retirement. We hadn't heard about an injury or something that was slowing him down. And then he up and retired. And so my thought was, could it have been like a PED thing where he just didn't want to get suspended? Like he knew that could have been coming, and maybe the league and the player and everything just got to say, yeah, you know what? Like before you get tagged with that, just go ahead and retire. I don't know. It just felt weird that he retired like he did. Then there are people like, oh, well, this clearly means that if Zadarius leaves and he's having, a pretty decent start to his career as an Eagle and he has all these years left, maybe this just speaks to how bad the locker room is. I don't think it's that. Jaire Alexander, it doesn't make the trip with the team to Lambeau. Some people thought that was weird. Then we started hearing that, like, hey, the knee issue that he had from the offseason might still be affecting him. He wasn't playing a lot in Baltimore. Some of the questions from the media around his time with Baltimore seemed to be like, Jaire Alexander essentially said that, like, he thinks that Baltimore wanted to play some of the younger guys, get a look at those guys. Obviously, that season's gone sideways for them. So then you come out to this. Diana Rossini's the one who reported it, but Jaire Alexander is, quote, contemplating retirement, end quote, and has informed the Eagles he is stepping away to, quote, focus on getting right physically and mentally, end quote. Now, does this matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. Was Jaire Alexander going to be the reason that the Philadelphia Eagles have a legitimate chance to repeat as Super Bowl champions? Probably not. I don't think that that's like the be-all, end-all. I don't think that it really moves the needle that much. I think that having another experienced defensive back was important, and I do think that ultimately having that kind of depth could be helpful. And knowing that, like, Adoree Jackson has had some pretty big issues this season, it probably would have been helpful. Now, I just saw, I somehow missed this, I guess. The Eagles put him on the retired list today. This is, sorry, so I guess this is breaking news to me. It might not be breaking news to you, but yeah, the Eagles have officially placed Jaire Alexander on the retired list. Let me pull this story up. They activated Jacorian Bennett. Let me find it here real quick. Who put this out? Bleeding Green Nation put this out. I don't know who the first one to report it was, but Jaire Alexander officially placed on the retired list. That is pretty interesting. The Eagles gave up a 2026 6th-round pick in exchange for Alexander and a 2027 7th-round pick. Here's the issue that I have. This is very simple. I don't mean for this to come off as insensitive or whatever. Somebody can get triggered for me saying whatever they want to get triggered for me saying. But the Eagles should be able to get that 6th-round pick back. Can we all agree on that? Like, if Jaire Alexander is walking away from football and is about to retire and never plays a snap for the Eagles, they should be able to get that asset back. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that, like, Jaire Alexander and Baltimore had a conversation and the Ravens were like, hey, you going to stick with this? Or you going to retire? And he's like, well, I might retire unless you trade me somewhere good. And then they go, all right, how about the defending Super Bowl champions? I'm not saying it had anything to do, like, I'm not saying that was the case. But, like, you trade a guy and then, like, 2 weeks later, he decides to retire without ever playing a snap. Does that feel right to everybody? I don't know. Does the 6th-round pick really matter? Not necessarily. But you traded a 6th to get this guy and a 7th-round pick in the following year's draft. I'm not saying that it matters. I'm just wondering, like, should the Eagles have some kind of compensatory thing coming their way? And I get it. Chris Reed here says no, trade was completed. He passes physical. Just because he walks away after practicing, no trade is going to be voided. Okay, well, for goodness sake. Peter Tom Willis says, peace out, Alexander. He would have been a locker room problem and made Chris Freed's prediction of Eagles' demise more likely. Why would he have made the locker room a bad place, though? What did I miss? Was there a Jaire Alexander bit of controversy that I missed? I don't remember seeing anything, but okay. If you want to elaborate, by all means, let me know. So that's a little bit of a downer. All right, so Jaire Alexander's retiring. All right, well, all the best to him. The thing that I found interesting is that they're saying for him to, like, kind of get himself in the right place physically and mentally. And then you go, all right, immediately, right? Because here at the Russ Joy Show, we care about human beings on the human level. We care about players on the human level. We try to extend a little bit of grace to these guys. If Jaire Alexander is going through, like, a mental thing, I hope he gets the help that he needs. If it's coming to grips with the fact that his knee never really got better and his career has effectively been taken away from him at this point, and that's just like a kind of a dark cloud, obviously we hope that everything turns out fine. And, you know, if he ever wants to come out of retirement, cool. And if he does retire, he's had, like, a good career. So, you know, there are worse things in the world. But anytime I see that they include, like, trying to get to the right place mentally, I do worry a little bit about the human being. So hopefully everything will be fine. Now, Fawcett says the 6th and the 7th, who cares? Joe Fisher says the trade should be voided. How he can flip the 6th. Now, we talked about the defense. Let's talk about the offense. Now, again, the Eagles only scored 10 points on Monday Night Football, but because the defense was so damn good, that was all they had to hold, or that was all they had to score, because the Packers could only muster 7 points on the night. Now, there are two things that happened in this game that I think are the most noteworthy on the offensive side of the ball. We saw a Saquon Barkley play where he spins, he jukes, he spins, has a big pickup. A.J. Brown blocks for him, probably helps him pick up another 6 or 7 yards. And then on the next play, we get really what was kind of the dagger, right? Like, once again, a relatively deep shot to DeVonta Smith, who skies up, brings the ball down, given the opportunity by his quarterback to go up and make a play. DeVonta Smith continues to prove why he is every bit of a number one receiver in this league. And while I think we'd all probably still consider A.J. Brown to be the number one wideout on the team, DeVonta would be a number one wideout on most teams in the NFL. So you have to acknowledge the fact that, like, we as a collective entity of people who root for the Eagles, we all should be pretty damn grateful that not only do we have A.J. Brown who can blow a game open at any given point, but you have DeVonta Smith, who I think is largely underrated by the national media and probably by other fan bases. But I do want to get to somebody who had some very nice words for DeVonta Smith after the game, and that is none other than the guy who I mentioned broke open a big play just before that, Saquon Barkley. Barkley, I always love when he gives you kind of that macro view. And remember, it's only his second season with the team. But, man, some of the insight and some of the ways that he talks about his teammates gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling. Let's go out to Saquon, who had some very nice things to say about DeVonta Smith, that big play, and just DeVonta as a player overall. Let's go out to Saquon.
Yeah, I feel like people forget that he won the Heisman. Like, he's a pretty good football player. And I don't know why that's like forgotten. I know how hard it is to win Heisman. But shout out to Smith. He comes up big for us every single time. Yeah.
So reminding people that the guy won the Heisman. It's really hard to do that. He's a very good effing player. And like the biggest takeaway there is he always makes the play. He always makes a big play. DeVonta Smith is maybe the most reliable guy on this team when it comes to, like, if you had to dial up a play, I would say that in a lot of situations this season, DeVonta Smith is the guy to make that play. However, sometimes the guy who does deliver the dagger, sometimes the guy who does make the big play, the big first down, whatever, the guy who makes the most impactful catch, especially late in games, ends up being A.J. Brown. Now, we all watched this game. We saw a 4th down call. Now, I actually didn't hate Nick Sirianni's decision to go for it deep in Packer territory with like a minute and a half or whatever left. I wasn't actually upset that they went for it on 4th down. I understand the logic. You have a 3-point lead. You're deep in the Packers territory. If the Packers go down the field and kick a field goal, okay, fine. You're going to overtime. There are worse things in the world. The Packers could miss a field goal at home, which we actually saw, right? We saw them miss a field goal. If the Packers go down and score a touchdown, all right, well, that sucks. But here's the thing. If the Eagles kick a field goal and the Packers go down on their next possession and score a touchdown, unless they have a total kerfuffle on the extra point, they're going to win the game. So I actually didn't think Nick Sirianni was wrong to go for it when he did. I know that a lot of people were upset by it. It didn't actually upset me. What upset me was the play itself. The play that apparently was a rogue decision by Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown pretty much goes to the corner of the end zone, front corner of the end zone. I mean, he's technically like, 6 or 7 yards short. Hurts drops a dime to A.J. A.J. reaches around the defender, right? He doesn't sky up like DeVonta typically does to pull the ball down. He reaches an arm out and around, and we've seen him make this catch a million times where he one-hands it around the defender, brings it back in, and then probably blows the top off the defense and picks up those remaining 6 or so yards and scores a touchdown. The game's over, and Nick Sirianni looks like a genius. There were images and videos coming out after that play of it looking like Nick Sirianni yelling, why, 2 or 3 times on the sideline. And so it kind of fed into this idea that, oh, did those guys go rogue? And the reason that I bring up this idea of going rogue is because Bill Colarulo went over on 97.5 The Fanatic on Tuesday, and he threw out this idea that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown together decided that they were going to draw up their own play, and that play that we saw, that route that we saw, that throw that we saw wasn't called by Kevin Patullo and or Nick Sirianni. So I want to go out. We're going to give Bill Colarulo the opportunity to make the case, and then we'll decide whether or not we think it's legit. All right, let's go out to Bill.
There were a lot of people, rightfully so, critical of the Eagles' decision to go for it on a 4th and 6 with only 30 seconds left in the game at the Green Bay Packers 35-yard line. When the ball got snapped and Jalen Hurts threw a bomb to A.J. Brown down the left sideline, I was shocked. I was furious. I said, that is a terrible decision.
I did not say that.
However, right before I came on the air, I have been told by multiple reliable sources that AJ and Jalen went rogue again.
Again?
And what? If you remember correctly, Seattle Seahawks game 2023, Sirianni came up to the podium, said it was his decision. We found out weeks later from AJ himself. Coach made himself look like a clown. That was me and Jalen going rogue. They did it again. And that is not opinion. That has been confirmed. Now, what I
would love to know who confirmed it, but we'll let this one play out.
Cannot confirm. If they didn't go rogue in that situation, what was the plan? Were you going to take a penalty and punt? Or did you just have another play called that wasn't that? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know AJ and Jalen went rogue again, and that is a problem.
So, you know, remember the old cartoon on Nickelodeon? Was it Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network? Remember the cartoon Courage the Cowardly Dog? Based on how the Eagles play calling looked on Monday night, I would actually say that the offensive coordinator is Kevin, the courageously not courageous coordinator. I mean, Kevin Patullo seemed to call a very conservative, scared game against the Packers on Monday night. And it felt like multiple instances where they just effectively gave up on third down. The play call wasn't to try to get a chunk yardage play. There were a few times where it's just like, all right, run up the gut, like get ready to punt. So what was the play going to be if the Eagles hadn't gone rogue, if Hurts and A.J. Brown hadn't gone rogue? I don't know. Could they have, like, what was the fourth down play going to be? Like, were they going to try a screen? Were they going to try like a 5-yard curl? Like, I don't know. I can't imagine that it was going to be a great play call. If it was a good enough play call or a great play call, and like Hurts and A.J. Brown believed in it, well, then we would have seen whatever the play was. Here's the problem. It feels like some of these guys have kind of, in a nice way, spoken out about the fact that like they think that the play calling is kind of bullshit, and that maybe the game planning itself is kind of bullshit. I mean, listen, can we just have a moment here to acknowledge the Eagles are 7-2. Things are pretty good. They're not perfect. Can we at least acknowledge that like there are probably 10 offensive coordinators in the league right now who would salivate over the idea of having this kind of talent? Yeah, I get that there have been injuries on the offensive line, including losing Lane Johnson for a chunk of this game as well. There are at least 10 offensive coordinators who would probably kill to have this Eagles offense and are probably watching these games, pulling their hair out, wondering what the hell Kevin Patullo and or Nick Sirianni are doing. This offense is far too talented to only have 10 points. And if you want to make the case, right, if you want to be one of these like psychos who's like, wow, this is clearly just Jalen Hurts. He's the problem. The receivers are great. The tight end's really good. The running back is elite. The offensive line is fantastic. It's all Jalen Hurts. He's an idiot. He's a loser. I fail to meet you even halfway on Hurts, because even if Hurts is like a mediocre at best quarterback, which is what some of the haters will say, you still score more than 10 points on the Packers. This to me is not a talent problem. This is not a player personnel problem. This is 100% play calling and game planning. That's it. I don't even think it's an execution thing. Yeah, if you want to freeze frame certain moments in the game, there's one where like Hurts kind of goes and picks up some yards with his legs, and it looked like A.J. Brown might have been open over the middle of the field, but what you don't see on that screenshot is that Micah Parsons is collapsing the pocket and Hurts has to run for his life. Okay, so like, I don't think it's an execution thing. Does Hurts miss a read sometimes in games? Sure. I think he does. But like, whatever. It still doesn't explain 10 points. Do the Packers have a good defense? They do. Should the Packers defense be good enough to hold this Eagles offense with this much talent to 10 points? No. No, they shouldn't. So anyway, bring it back in. Here's the issue. People who want to believe this Hurts and A.J. Brown went rogue thing, they're going to have to figure something out really quickly. Do you believe it? And are you also one of the people who's convinced that their relationship is so fractured that it's broken the locker room and everybody hates each other? Because I don't know about you, but like if I hated somebody the way that some people are trying to make it sound like Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown hate each other, if I hated somebody that much, you know what I'm not doing? I'm not collaborating with that person to go rogue and stick it to my coaching staff and call that receiver's number on a potential game-ending play. I'm probably not doing that. So, like, you kind of have to make up your mind. Do they hate each other or not? Because if they hate each other, they're not going rogue, and they're not making that call. If they don't like each other, well, it's still possible that they dislike the play calling more, and they collaborated on that decision to run that route and to make that throw. Or maybe a lot of it's just overblown. I mean, I don't know. Chris Reed says, if they went rogue, it shows no respect to the coaching staff. Here's the thing, right? Because it sounds like DeVonta Smith might have been the one who said whatever 1 and 11 want to call. You know, that's up to them. Hurts and A.J. Brown didn't come out after the game and say, yeah, we did that. That was us. We made that choice. Them silently going rogue and calling their own play is only disrespectful to the coaching staff and probably the guys in the huddle, right? Because they knew what the play was going to be, right? Unless they called an entirely different play. Like, was this a scenario where like Hurts called the play and then, I don't know, AJ just ran this route independently and they had kind of agreed to it? Is this like a totally different call in the huddle? I don't know. Is it disrespectful to the coaching staff? Yeah, I mean, I think if you go out there and you call something that the coaches didn't call for, yeah, it could be interpreted as disrespectful. If the idea strategically was to take the penalty and then punt or to wind the clock down and then kick a field goal, and you took that strategic decision and threw it out the window to call that play, well, then that is a problem because that gets into the strategy of the game. If the idea was, no, we're legitimately going to call a really stupid play to try to pick up a first down and end the game, and the quarterback in his number one wideout said, no, we're going to do this other thing, I actually don't hate that as much. If we were to find out that like Sirianni wanted them to take delay of game and then punt, or wanted to trot Jake Elliott out there for a field goal, that would be different. Like, then I would say, yeah, that's not a great idea. It's not a very good thing for you to totally go against the strategy of the game. Joe Fisher says, the same BS that happens between Coots and Mishkov. Gotta love the fans of town. Seem like the fans want problem between two players. I think people just like there being drama. And I'm not sure that this is a big dramatic thing. I'm really not. I actually take it as a pretty good sign if AJ Brown and DeVonta and Jalen Hurts are on the same page enough to potentially go rogue. That makes me think that they might not hate each other as much as some people think. All right. That's talking about people who might like each other, might not like each other, might hate each other. Let's talk about somebody who does like some people. And that, of course, is Harrison Bader, who was acquired ahead of the trade deadline by the Phillies, had a nice little run here. People were kind of bullish on the idea of bringing him back. He was easily the Phillies' best outfielder defensively. And I would say that he had a lot of clutch plays this season that make you say, hey, bring the guy back. It'd be swell to bring him back. Well, it seems like he's not coming back unless you want to play semantics. So Harrison Bader goes over to Instagram and posts the following. Philly baby, 2.5 months was not nearly enough, but that's all the gods had in store for us this year. To the ones who made it happen, thank you. To every screaming fan, I love you and thank you. To a clubhouse I'm humbled to have been a part of, especially thank you. This game is a gift, but you, Philly, are a fucking gift. And he puts the PHs in fucking and gift. Little extra PHing. Now, I know what you're thinking. That clearly means Harrison Bader is gone. And it's entirely possible that he's gone. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I think that there's like a pretty good chance that he's already gotten the feeling from the Phillies that they're not bringing him back, right? I think that that's potentially a fair thing. I will, however, point out that was the first post that Harrison Bader has had on Instagram since October 4th, when he posted a picture of himself, I think, walking into a Phillies game. It was on October 4th. So I'm not going to stand here and sound all the alarm bells and say, this is clearly an indication that he thinks it's over with Philadelphia. It might be. It could be. But he says this year, and he hasn't posted on Instagram for over a month. Could that have just been an acknowledgement to the fans that, like, hey, I appreciate you this year? And him just kind of coming around to like, all right, I didn't actually post anything. I didn't post a thank you to the fans. I don't know how free agency is going to go, but I want to make sure that I thank the Phillies fans. Yeah, because here's the other thing. I don't know when he's going to sign, and he might sign here and he might sign somewhere else. If Bader ultimately decides to go sign for another team, well, what's the last thing you want to do? Say he goes and signs with, I don't know. Say he signs with like Cleveland or something. I don't know. I'm making this up. But just say Bader goes and signs with Cleveland. Well, the first thing that, like, the last thing you want to do if you're Harrison Bader, you sign with Cleveland or whatever, is to then go to Instagram and post a thank you to Phillies fans after it's announced that you signed with the Guardians. Like, you want the Guardians fans to believe you are very happy to be there. So again, I'm not saying that for sure this is like the end of the road. I think that this year thing is kind of interesting. To me, that's almost like more of an acknowledgement of, hey, that's the only amount of time that we got to spend together as a team together this season. I don't necessarily think that that means like the idea of him coming back here is DED dead. It also doesn't make me say like he's absolutely coming back, right? Because we would know if he signed. So I don't know. I'll go out to the comments, though. So Chris Freed says the key phrase in the Bader posting is this year. Fawcett says, unfortunately, I think the Phillies lose Schwarber, so they need to bring Bader back and sign another outfielder. Chris Freed says no one is going to sign until the winter meetings in December. Joe Fisher says, damn, I want Bader back. Just think we could have had Bader and Vladar shirts. I'll tell you what, I will make the Master Bader shirts if he comes back. I will have to. 100% I'm going to have to. Now, I will point out that this did kind of come in conjunction with Dave Dombrowski talking about Crawford. And it seems like there's a good chance that Justin Crawford could start the season with the Phillies or play a pretty meaningful role for the Phillies in the upcoming season. So Dombrowski apparently said something about Justin Crawford at the GM meetings, saying, quote, in my mind, Crawford has a real strong chance to be with our club. We're giving him that opportunity to be with our club. And then there were reports since then that they're viewing Justin Crawford as a center fielder. Well, of course, that could affect the likelihood of Bader being back. It also came out that apparently the Phillies are very, interested in moving on from Nick Castellanos, with Dombrowski saying something to the extent of sometimes it's good for a player to have a change of scenery. So it very much feels like they're going to be doing their best to split from Nick Castellanos. That in itself could create a spot for Crawford. If they also let Bader go, okay, that also makes sense, I guess. Everybody's then going to point to, does this mean that they're going to be in on Kyle Tucker? There's just a thought out there that if he were to leave Chicago, maybe the Phillies would be one of the teams that's most interested. I have no idea if that'll happen. That's going to be another big money guy. I can't really envision a scenario. You move on from Castellanos, you re-sign Schwarber to a big deal, and then you also bring in Tucker. That feels like a lot. Bregman has also been attached to the Phillies, as has Bo Bichette. I don't think Bichette will be here. Bregman would be interesting. I totally see a scenario where they try to move on from Alec Boehm in the offseason. It's just kind of the whole thing with the Phillies is that I feel like we have no better idea of which direction they're going in now than we did, roughly a month ago when the season ended. Like I kind of thought we would have a better indication of where things are headed. And to this point, it has not happened. One little bit of news and note. We talked about the YouTube TV Disney debate, debacle, that whole mess, that negotiating mess. I just saw a report come out from Andrew Marchand over at The Athletic that apparently it looks like there's some momentum building toward a YouTube TV ESPN deal. There was a thing that came out today, I think it was today, about how the real sticking point hasn't been ESPN. It's instead been ABC, that the ABC of it all is what has led to the biggest issue in that carriage dispute between YouTube TV and Disney. So it's interesting. All right. Last thing I wanted to get to. It's not the Flyers. We're going to talk about the Flyers all night, right? Snow the Goalie Radio at 5:00 at Chickies and Pizza, South Philly. You join us there. 5 to 6, we'll be taking calls. Then we're going to go across the street for the Press Row Show. I want to talk to you about the Sixers for a second. I do. I think it's a very important thing that we have a conversation about the Sixers, because the Sixers haven't gotten a lot of love on this show. We haven't done a lot to talk about the Sixers on this show in recent weeks. And so I want to make sure that we actually do touch on them here, if for only a few minutes. Last night's game was ugly. Last night's game had a lot of the same issues that I talked about on Monday's show. A bad look with the final possession. Ultimately, the Sixers were lucky that Kelly Oubre was able to rebound an Edwards missed three-pointer. He goes up, he skies up, he immediately puts it back. Great play by Kelly Oubre. But yet again, a situation where a guy that you don't want to have the final shot, Justin Edwards, is the guy who gets the final shot. And I continue to question and I continue to wonder why the Sixers are so bad in the final moments of games. Now, it ultimately worked out. Kelly Oubre, that putback got the Sixers a 2-point win. Everybody's happy, hunky-dory. And again, they don't ask how, they ask how many. But there were moments in that game where I felt absolutely befuddled by what I was watching. There were moments in that game where I felt so disconnected in terms of like what I would expect the Sixers to do versus what they were able to actually accomplish. Now, Maxey did not have his best game. Finishes with 21 points. He entered the night averaging over 30 points per game. It was second in the NBA. He only gets 21 on the night. Andre Drummond had a pretty good game. Nice double-double, 14 points, 13 rebounds. Kelly Oubre only had 12 points on the night, but 2 of those 12 are the ones that won the game. Justin Edwards, who I said, isn't the guy that you want to take the last shot, actually led the team in scoring with 22 points. Quentin Grimes had 18 off the bench. VJ Edgecombe, not a good game. At least not a good game shooting the ball. That to me is concerning. The Sixers on the night shot below 40% from three-point range. They shot nearly 43% from the field. It was not their best game holistically. It wasn't their best game on the whole. And here is the bigger issue, right? So for all the people who like to go out of their way to say the Sixers are a better team without Joel Embiid, last night's game was being played against a Boston team that has largely underwhelmed this season, a Boston team that is still without Jason Tatum, a Boston team that entered the game under 500 and finished the game under 500. This is not a world beater squad. This is not a team that I really do view right now as being one that's going to be in position to get a top 4 seed in the East. I think that Boston will probably be able to figure it out enough to be a playoff team, and maybe they get Tatum back and they give a high seed a real scare in the first round. But like, this Boston team isn't great, but they also don't suck. And this Sixers team had a really, really hard time with the Celtics. But here's your big issue. What's the number one thing that we know about the Sixers team this season? It doesn't matter who's in the lineup. They are the worst team in the league point differential-wise in the third quarter. And it continued again. It continued again on Tuesday night. The Sixers had a lead at halftime, I think, right? It was 41, it was 51 to 41, 10-point lead. Third quarter came around. Boston outscored the Sixers 36 to 20. For the non-math whizzes out there, that is a minus 16-point differential for the Sixers. Not good. Not good at all. That takes an 11-point lead at halftime, right? 41. Or 10-point lead. 41 to 51. 10-point lead. It flips the script. Now, thankfully, the Sixers did outscore the Celtics in the final frame, 31 to 23. But that third quarter issue, I don't know what the deal is. I don't know why it keeps happening. I don't know if it's a personnel thing. I don't know if it's a Nick Nurse coaching thing. That's not great. You cannot be a team that has aspirations of being a top 4, let's say, seed in the Eastern Conference and going into the playoffs, riding a high. You can't aspire to be that kind of team and get your doors blown off every game in the third quarter. It doesn't work. And of course, there is a little bit of negativity because we found out before the game that Joel Embiid would be out, or he was downgraded to doubtful, and then he was ultimately out because of right knee soreness. And you say, oh, well, Russ, that's not actually a big deal because they've been load managing him because, remember, he had the surgery on his knee in the offseason or whatever, and, like, it just stands to reason. Like, they just need to let Joel Embiid get healthy, and they said he were going to listen to his body, and, it's his knee. Like, what are you going to... The issues that he's had with his knee were his left knee, not his right knee. So now all of a sudden he has knee soreness in his right knee, not the surgically operated on, like relatively recently knee. So now he's got pain on the other side, on the other knee. And that is where we start to panic, because the one thing this Sixers team cannot do this season is be totally uncertain about when he's going to be in and out of the lineup. It's one thing if you know that on one end of the back-to-back, he's not going to play. That's totally fine. You can kind of game plan for that mentally. You can kind of game plan for that from a personnel perspective. But when he just up and has a random knee soreness that knocks him out of a game that he's expected to play in, like he was against the Celtics, that's bad, bad, very bad. Oh, and by the way, like, we still don't know what the hell's going on with Paul George, because some of the beats make it sound like Paul George has been practicing with the team. And he's still, we still have no timeline update. They were saying last night that there were going to be some scans done, I guess, on Embiid, and they were hoping to have an update on Paul George as well. And I've yet to see anything. This isn't a place that, like, I'm starting to, like, sound all the alarms, right? The Sixers are 3 games over 500. They're 7-4. They've won 2 out of 3 matchups against the Celtics, albeit without Jason Tatum, but they've also not exactly had Embiid for all these games. They haven't had Paul George for any of them. You look at it and you go, I want to be excited. Like, I do. And I do like watching the Sixers. And I think that no matter whether Embiid is in the lineup or not, I still am going out of my way to watch every Sixers game because I love the Sixers. I love basketball. I love watching the Sixers play basketball this year. I think it's good. I think it's overall, it's been an okay season. But man, the uncertainty, that's the problem. The uncertainty around Embiid. That is like a big issue. VJ Edgecombe coming back to earth, being a rookie, kind of hitting an early rookie wall, sort of to be expected. But this team can't go through the whole season kind of gasping and holding their breath that Embiid's not going to like get dinged up at some point and miss games for an indefinite period of time. Now, I've yet to see any kind of an update. Hopefully by the time Wednesday night rolls around, we'll have a better idea of like Joel Embiid's status going forward. Hopefully it's not just some arbitrary, like we'll reevaluate him in 5 days or 2 weeks or whatever. But that part is a little bit of a downer because the Sixers get a win against Boston. You want to feel good about it. And you want to know, hey, the big man's going to be back for the next game. We've yet to hear that. So not ideal. All right. Unfortunately, we end on a down note today. But, on a positive note, the Eagles won. The Sixers won. And the Flyers take on the best player in hockey tonight, Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. So again, I will shout out the fact that we have 2 things going on, okay? One, we have Snow the Goalie Radio at 5 o'clock at Chickies and Pete's in South Philly on Packer Avenue, right by the sports complex. And then at 7 o'clock, we will go live with the Press Row Show previewing Flyers Oilers tonight at the Xfinity Mobile Arena. So if you're looking for the hockey talk, I got good news for you. You got 2 shows coming your way, one at 5, one at 7 over on the Snow the Goalie channels. And if you can't watch any of it live and you want to listen to it a little bit later on, you can, of course, subscribe in the podcast feed, as you can also for the Russ Joy Show over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. So do me a favor. Seriously, do me one little favor. Just one. Let somebody else in your life know about the show. So I don't care. It can be one person, it can be 2 people. Send the link to a friend, family member, ex-girlfriend, an old boss, an old coworker. And if they say, who the hell is this guy with a 5 head? Like, why do I care? I don't actually care if they watch. I don't. I mean, it'd be great if they did, but they don't have to. But YouTube likes it when you like the video, share the video, and subscribe and ring the bell. So, those are all important things. Okay. I will be back on Friday. But before that, I will be back tonight with Snow the Goalie Radio and the Press Row Show. And then I'm going to take Thursday. No shows on Thursday. Friday, we'll be back here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I will talk to each and every one of you on Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.